RGG Studios is set to kick off 2024 with the next installment of Ichiban Saga in Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth, and I'm personally itching to get into some shenanigans out in Hawaii. But before that, we got another game in the form of Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, which is the first game centered around Kiryu since Yakuza 6, The Song of Life. So keeping that in mind, this is going to be your only spoiler warning for the entire video, because not only am I going to be going into important details of this game, but it's basically going to also be spoilers for Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, and Yakuza Like a Dragon. So if you don't want to know too much, then I would say stop watching now and come back once you played the game. Still here? Okay, cool. Now that the babies are gone. This game covers what Kiryu's been up to ever since he faked his death at the end of Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, and what led up to his appearance in Yakuza Like a Dragon. It's fucking Kiryu! Let's fucking go! So clearly there's a line of inquiry as to how we ended up there, but is the answer to that question satisfying? Well, I'm itching to tell you about that too, so today we are going to be taking a look at Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name on PS5, which I decided to replay it on after I scored a physical copy from VGP. I also decided to do that replay because they recently dropped that English dub patch, so we're going to talk about all of that. Let's get started.
Hey, yo, Giant, let's go!
3 years after Kiryu faked his death, he's been idling away under the thumb of the Daidoji faction, who he went into an agreement with to protect his loved ones at the Morning Glory Orphanage, although nobody seems too happy about it. I mean, clearly Kiryu isn't super jazzed about the arrangement, but then there's this guy named Hanawa who keeps trying to make him feel like a freeloader, and Kiryu's quick to remind him that they all agreed to this together, but he's all, yeah, but you're eating all our food, bro. So they occasionally ask him for favors to earn his keep, which he doesn't really have to, but I'd be bored if I couldn't even go to a bar to relax without these guys sweating me 24/7. So the recent job in question is for him to stand guard as they smuggle gold for reasons that take all of 5 minutes to be exposed as bullshit when the transfer gets ambushed by some Yakuza who try to kidnap Hanawa. And no less than twice during this whole scenario did Kiryu get recognized, which honestly makes me annoyed because the Daidoji keeps threatening him about what'll happen if word gets out that he's alive. So, why do y'all keep sending him out in front of people for missions? Y'all have a little too much faith that people wouldn't recognize the most famous Yakuza in modern Japan. They clearly don't learn after this either, because they send him out to Yokohama to investigate the Seiryu clan to see if they had anything to do with it because, quote, Yakuza knows how the Yakuza work. Well, this obviously goes bad and leads Kiryu to getting jumped by the Omi, who are led by this one guy who I think has fake teeth, and this other guy named Shishiro who is clearly hoping the puffer coat will distract from his mug. After causing a scene in broad daylight, they finally manage to kidnap Hanawa and give Kiryu a burner phone so they can contact him. But then back at their hideout, the Daidoji are all, welp, rip Hanawa, and Kiryu starts foaming at the mouth for a chance to save him. The Daidoji also clearly don't understand how simple Kiryu can be sometimes, because when they go, why you going so hard for Hanawa? We figured you'd love to get him off your back. Kiryu basically replies, well, nobody else talks to me here, so... Kiryu meets up with the Yakuza guy whose name is Surano and learns that the whole debacle happened because, and I'm jumping ahead here a little to keep this streamlined as possible, so again, spoilers, Masaru Watase didn't buy into Kiryu's death for a minute and wanted to track him down to hire him for a job, in exchange for them offering a way for Kiryu to get away from the Daidoji. That job? Showing up for the dissolution announcement of the Omi Alliance and the Tojo clan as muscle. The way they'll pay Kiryu for it? Offering up Hanawa's cadaver as a stand-in for another fake death so Kiryu can get away from the Daidoji. They clearly followed in the Daidoji's footsteps too when it comes to underestimating Kiryu's simplicity and loyalty, because with the help of an info broker that they introduced to him named Akame, they go through an entirely different mission altogether on a castle atop a floating shipping container, which just makes me think that somebody at RGG Studios was a really big fan of One Piece film Gold. and it's here that they find where they're keeping Hanawa and Kiryu goes to rescue him. Then they kidnap Tsuruno, so I guess the Uno in his name stands for Uno Reverse, since this whole situation flipped on him and now the Daidoji want Kiryu to kill him so they can keep his secret. But we know how that goes. Kiryu never killed anybody. So he lets Tsuruno go, and they try to make Hanawa kill Kiryu now as retribution. But then Hanawa refuses, so they're going to kill them both, but then the Daidoji leader shows up to praise Kiryu and Hanawa for having a bond now, alongside Tsuruno, who shows up with 50 billion yen in property value that he offered up to the Daidoji, so I feel like that might have more to do with their subsequent decision to let Kiryu and Hanawa live. Whew, that was a lot. You still following this? Good. Because now the Daidoji and Omi are basically in joint custody of Kiryu, as the Omi still want his help, specifically to remove another Omi higher-up named Homare Nishitani from the picture so that he can't oppose the Omi's dissolution, and Kiryu gets right to working on that. During this process, he seems to get real buddy-buddy with Tsuruno and Shishido, and they offer up a lot of exposition about Nishitani, but the main thing to know is that secretly, he's a remnant of the Jingwan Mafia, which I feel like should have been obvious what with the K-pop idol getup, but whatever. When they eventually confront him, they set his hideout on fire as Kiryu fights him in his main office, and just when Kiryu thinks it's safe to just walk away and never see Nishitani again, Shishido goes full serial killer and just starts stabbing him because he and Tsuruno knew that Kiryu wouldn't kill him. So Kiryu is none too happy about it, but what's he supposed to do? Gather the Dragon Balls? So he goes back to the Daidoji base and waits for Watase's return from his prison stay, during which time he talks to Hanawa about his life and how Yumi always wanted to get married in Hawaii and how he planned to propose to her back at the beginning of the series, and whips out the ring he bought for her, saying he planned to lay it to rest at a cathedral in Hawaii. This conversation broke my fucking heart because that means that this man has held on to this ring for over 24 years, as if it wasn't already depressing enough watching Kiryu grapple with his situation and find ways to not have to go against his convictions and commit murder and the emotional toil of everybody threatening the orphanage kids. Now I have to watch him reminisce about how much he loved Yumi. I can't deal, bro. Fast forward to Watase coming out of prison. He meets up with the gang when, surprise, Shishido betrays everyone because TLDR, he doesn't want to give up the lifestyle because he worked real hard for it. Go figure. Aww. Also, he faked stabbing Nishitani, so now he's here too. And after hounding Kiryu for half the game, now that it's confirmed that this is in fact Kiryu, he's gone full sicko mode and teamed up with Shishido to stop them. Naturally, they fail. Shishido falls into a big hole, so he's assumed dead or something, I guess. And Nishitani somehow, in his condition, survives getting hit by a car driven by Hanawa with Akame in tow. So they tie him up, and basically at this point they're prepping to force him into Daidoji servitude, which I should feel is kind of fucked up, but at this point I'm like, Watase survived the brawl, but got stabbed, so they patch him up and truck onto the dissolution announcement. And this is where the timeline finally overlaps with Yakuza Like a Dragon, which I was so glad we finally saw this happen. A couple of times throughout the game, they referenced Ichiban, so I was waiting for it to happen. I mean, way back when the Omi kidnapped Hanawa, the whole thing happened right next to the homeless camp in Ajinsho where Ichiban ended up, and they even mentioned that he's sleeping in Nanba's tent just as Kiryu was there cleaning himself up. And then later, Tsuruno is feeding Kiryu exposition about Ichiban, which feels both like general fan service and a quick recap for those who didn't play Yakuza Like a Dragon. And if you were one of those people, then I must say once again, you are weak. Fight me! Anywho, the fight breaks out and you play Kiryu's take on this particular event, clearing out enemies to escort Watase and Daigo out of the building. But right at the end, surprise again, Shishido pops up, having survived his tumble. Everyone takes off their shirt in the courtyard, and Kiryu proceeds to beat all 20 health bars out of Shishido. The Daidoji throw him in their trunk to suffer the same fate as Nishitani, I guess, and then the game skips to sometime after Kiryu gave Ichiban his character building boss fight in Like a Dragon, and Ichiban finished his story. Kiryu is chilling at the base as usual when Hanawa pulls up and decides to reward Kiryu. The reward in question? They had a camera at Kiryu's grave while the Morning Glory kids had visited. They found the camera and left a heartfelt message to Kiryu because, just like Watase, they don't believe he's dead either. And did I say Kiryu reminiscing about Yumi was heartbreaking? Because this scene destroyed me. Because as he's watching the video, you see his hand shaking, you hear him breathing erratically, and then tears start hitting the tablet, only for the game to turn to this.
He's 4 now. He can read and write already. The last time I saw him, he couldn't even talk. And now
he's really coming along.
Physically, I'm here. Emotionally, I'm in the trenches, because then they follow up by showing him that the kids left a drawing that Haruto made of the kids and Kiryu. I cannot do this, bro. Kiryu is bawling his eyes out and saying he feels like he's in purgatory after all this. I'm not strong enough. I used to watch Taichi wrestle those nightmare fuel-faced kids on the beach, and now he's telling us he's a firefighter? Where is time going? Now that we've all been emotionally ruined proper, Kiryu thanks Hanawa for showing him these things, and the game fast forwards again to show that the Daidoji have again rewarded Kiryu for his efforts, though I feel it's, again, mainly for getting that 50 billion yen in property. They allow him an indefinite vacation, so he decides to take that trip to Hawaii, with Hanawa preparing him a new identity, giving him the name Taichi Suzuki, where Hanawa reveals that he was aware of Kiryu's time using that name as a taxi driver in Yakuza 5, and figured it was better because the code name they've been using this whole time, Joryu, was too close to Kiryu because f***ing duh, and then Kiryu takes off. But then we're given one last post-credit scene where we're now in 2023 with Kiryu dropping off Yumi's ring at a cathedral in Hawaii, bookending what is undoubtedly the most poignant chapter in Kiryu's life yet, while properly setting the scene for Kiryu to eventually run into Ichiban when Infinite Wealth drops. I feel like we had to play with very loose writing in some places to get things shaking and moving, which might have left you with a little bit of tonal whiplash because of how drastically things kept escalating throughout, but like a Dragon, Gaiden ended up showcasing the biggest payoff I've yet seen for being invested in the series. From zero to now, to have seen Kiryu's life from his early 20s to his 50s, to have made it here, starting from the beginning. It fully expects and respects that you have, and that they managed to have these moments in a plot that played faster and looser than most of the series, considering it's around half the length of a standard RGG game, with the plot only being around 10 hours, though if you're like me, you probably got so sidetracked with the usual side content that it took about 20 hours. This game contains the greatest hits of Kiryu's side quest fare, from the karaoke, to the cabaret club dating sims with real girls that still feel so jarring to me, from the Coliseum fights I didn't even mention in the plot where Kiryu fights lookalikes of his biggest battles and beyond, all the way to the returning slot car races from Zero. This game is packed with the best of Kiryu's content. And that's not even counting the dress-up game, where they got this man Kiryu serving looks, and the arcade games that also now include Sega Racing Classic 2 and Fighting Vipers 2, if that matters to you. I was having so much fun playing this game. And of course, the combat is good. They once again brought back Kiryu's style switching combat, but it's a little more stripped down in this. There's Agent style, where Kiryu does a little more technical area control style fighting, and the Yakuza style, where Kiryu sticks with what he knows and brawls it out with heavier chargeable strikes. They're both good, but I want to emphasize the tech in technical when I talk about Agent style. While the style fundamentally is about crowd control attacks, it's also where Kiryu gets a bunch of secret agent gadgets to use throughout the adventure. It starts off a little light with the spider gadget, where Kiryu basically turns into Spider-Man, whipping around enemies with wires from his watch, which doesn't offer a lot in terms of versatility until you upgrade it, but it eventually becomes very useful for opening up room during big crowd fights. Then there's the Hornet gadget, which lets you summon a fleet of mini drones to ram into enemies, the Firefly gadget that is a mini e-cigarette bomb, and the Serpent, or as I like to call it, my boy got rocket shoes. That one's my favorite. These gadgets, as well as all of Kiryu's abilities, are upgraded in a simplified version of the Yakuza 0 way, where you spend money and skill points to unlock the upgrades. There's a lot of ways to earn money with the side activities, whether it be the Coliseum or using the Akame network to do side quests for cash, so you have ways to fill this out. The combat and general gameplay is fun as always, so I don't feel like I gotta sell you much harder on that, because at this point, when it's not an entire genre change, we all know what we're getting into. But I also want to highlight that I think this is one of the best Dragon Engine games yet. I still don't agree with Sega's assessment of the Dragon Engine needing to be moved on from, because I feel that the Dragon Engine is one of the best, most cinematic game engines I've yet laid eyes on. I feel like they know it too, but they probably think it's not worth upgrading it to maintain the identity when they can do similar things on Unreal 5. But I think they're missing that this engine has given the series its own visual identity. And speaking of identity, I took long enough to make this video that I was able to play it twice over to experience the English dub once it dropped in a free update. This is probably the biggest talking point right now about this game, so I want to touch on the biggest controversy surrounding it. Kiryu's new English voice actor. When Yakuza Like a Dragon dropped in 2020, it was the first game to be localized since the original game on PS2, not counting the Judgment games. And when we saw characters like Majima got recast, much to people's moaning, while that was so long ago Mark Hamill didn't even remember doing the role, it was a welcome surprise to see that they brought back Carrillo to voice Kiryu for his brief appearance during the game. Imagine the uproar then when, for this very next game to follow, they decided to finally recast the role with YouTuber and voice actor Yongye in the shoes of the Dragon of Dojima. Fans of the series got loud, and I mean very loud, about how much they hated this change, ranging from general disapproval to making videos shitting on him and acting like he ruined their favorite character. I mean, grow up? Let me be frank. I do not hate Yongye's performance here. However, before people probably see this video and eventually start getting weird, I'm finding it very hard to get used to this voice. Let me explain. As I see it, you have a character with almost a full 2 decades of history, who has, for most of that, been voiced by 2 people. Takaya Kuroda as the Japanese voice, and Carrillo as the English one. And regardless of how many games one of these guys actually worked on, there's almost 2 decades of familiarity and association with these names to this character, as opposed to Yongye having, 2 months in the seat at this point? So I think there's a bit of reactionary outrage based on preference for what already existed and a weird combination of recency bias with a predisposition to dislike what we're getting. So while I will acknowledge that this isn't likely to move a majority of minds on this matter, I also don't really want to. I'm just saying that maybe you should think a little harder about why it is that you don't like the performance. And I've done that too. So for me, my reasoning is that this voice makes Kiryu sound inexperienced. And that comes off as jarring because we have a character whose story has canonically spanned 30-ish years. And this late in the game, he's been given a voice that sounds like we would have been more used to it if we started at 0 with it.
Leave this part to me. You guys worry about the front line. I'll protect the back even if it costs me my life.
Leave this part to me. You guys worry about the front line. I'll protect the back, even if it costs me my life.
It legitimately sounds like I could have took this change easier if I was listening to it as the 20-year-old fresh-faced rookie Kiryu as opposed to the grizzled middle-aged man who has lived a long, harrowing life at this point. There's even been moments throughout where he doesn't sound bad, specifically when he keeps his voice to a low, growling tone, but the second the voice goes up a couple of octaves in more dramatic moments, it kinda loses me. I have literally sat here and listened to him, line by line on stream, thinking about this thoroughly and have come to this conclusion. I am not necessarily a fan yet, but I have a lot of respect for Yongye for putting himself out there and giving it his best, I guess, because while some may say he hasn't exactly been taking all of the criticism gracefully, I think he had to have known what he was getting himself into to some degree. I think that shows a certain amount of fortitude, so I will continue to try to hear this Kiryu out. But hey, you can ignore all this and just set the game back to Japanese and keep crying about it on Twitter if you want. You don't have to eat your veggies tonight, you big babies. But I still find Like a Dragon Gaiden, The Man Who Erased His Name, to be an incredibly poignant, sobering, but overall amazing experience for longtime fans of the series. If you haven't played this yet because you were holding out or were mad about the voice or something, but are a longtime fan, I urge you to play this. There's still so much more for you to hear than the elephant in the room. And if you aren't a longtime fan, this is still a super solid action game. But I will say, if you can get it for a good price, then hit up VGP or Play Asia to get a physical copy if you're like me and didn't want to settle for a digital-only copy of the game in the West. And if you're still here, I want to say thanks for watching the video. Clearly, there is a lot to discuss with this video, so please, if you feel like it, leave a comment or like and subscribe along the way. I would appreciate all of that. And also shout out to my patrons, because I recently mentioned in my update video that I just started a Patreon. So if you want to hit up the One Sleepy Giant Patreon and support the channel, I would super appreciate it. Much like I appreciate my very first patron, Megan. So I appreciate you for the support, and that's kind of where I'm going to leave off on this one. You already know what it is. My name is Hector, and I'm One Sleepy Giant. I had a lot of fun, but I gotta get to bed soon because as I'm recording this video, I'm also packing to get ready to go to MagFest, which is probably gonna be really fun. So I'll catch you guys later. Take care.